giving you everything you need to fight the Trump administration. This is The Bill Press Show, live at youtube.com/The Bill Press Show.
His lawyer says he's not under investigation. Donald Trump says, yes, I am. Who do you believe? Hey, what do you say? Hello, everybody. June 19, it's Monday. How about it? Great to see you today. Happy belated Father's Day to all the dads out there. Hope you had a good one. Hope your kids remember to call or at least say Happy Father's Day. Although, you know, it's not such a big deal as Mother's Day. Yeah, dads sort of get second-rate holiday there. No flowers, no candy, no meals out. You know, lucky if you get a phone call.
Look, dads, as long as you don't screw it up, you've done your job.
That's right.
You don't have to do any of the real heavy lifting that moms have to do. Just be there.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Anyhow, good to see you today. Lots to talk about. Yes, indeed. The White House can't make up his mind whether the president is under investigation or is not under investigation. Donald Trump spending his first overnight at Camp David. We don't know whether he'll ever be back. Surprised, actually 2 nights surprised that he went there. In the first place, it is not the gold-plated luxury that he is used to at Mar-a-Lago or Bedminster, New Jersey. And what about that Cosby jury couldn't decide? It's a hung jury, and there probably will be a second trial. And as if it's not already not big enough, Amazon now owns Whole Foods. Think about those possibilities. We got so much to talk about. We'll get right to it. Good to see you today. But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
All right, here we go. Just a couple of those stories making news on a Monday. You remember Bill O'Reilly? You remember this guy?
Oh, yeah.
There you go. There you go. Perfect for a Monday
Bill
morning.
O'Reilly, I remember him.
Bill O'Reilly left Fox News after
he was
fired, leaving Fox News amid allegations of sexual harassment. Well, he announced over the weekend that he is going to come back, not to Fox News, but he is going to, quote, start my own operation, end quote. He's going to start doing a 30-minute news broadcast on his website. And he says it's going to look a lot like the O'Reilly Factor. Same format, same sort of topic, same news stuff that he's going to cover. He's already hired a production team, including a Fox News producer who left the network to come and work for Bill O'Reilly.
You know, with all the ad revenue that Breitbart is losing as of late, you would think that would be a match made in heaven.
You'd think.
But from what we hear, Breitbart is very weary of putting people like him on their platform these days.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Bill O'Reilly is you never know what you're going to get. You know, I mean, he can go anywhere. He doesn't make any sense. He doesn't really follow any kind of real philosophy. He is just Bill O'Reilly. He's his own thing.
Yeah, you know, lots of luck. I think people that have had it with Bill O'Reilly. Maybe
I don't disagree.
Maybe that's wishful thinking, but you know, he's had a long run. It was a very successful run. Get out. He's a loser.
I don't know who is hurting because Bill O'Reilly is not on TV anymore.
He's got passionate fans, though.
Yeah, I guess, but I think a lot of them are sort of dying off. I hate to put it that way. This is a sad story. Yeah. Another noose found here in Washington, D.C., this time hanging from a lamppost outside of the National Gallery of Art. This is the third incident where a noose was found in Washington, D.C. on the National Mall in just the last couple of weeks. This one was found on Saturday. Like I said, just outside of the National Gallery of Art, there was a noose discovered inside the National Museum of African American History and Culture, lying on the floor, and there was another one hanging from a tree at the Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden.
I have a proposed solution that would help with some other problems in the city.
Sure.
Ban tourists. They're horrible.
I mean, look, if you're coming to Washington, D.C., don't bring any nooses, guys.
I'm not sure these are tourists, Jamie. I think these are probably some of our resident idiots.
It's too bad.
But I hope they catch them, you know?
I do too, man.
Yeah.
This is not okay.
Put some cops on bicycles on the mall up and down in the middle of the night. I bet they can catch some people that don't belong there.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Well, what do you say? Indeed, the big question, is he or is he not under investigation? Depends on who you ask. Hello, everybody. Monday, June 19. How about it? It is The Bill Press Show. Hope you enjoyed a great weekend, celebrated Father's Day in style, and remembered your dad. Enjoy those of you dads. Enjoy the day with your friends and family, particularly. We've got so much to talk about today. Coming to you live from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. It is hot. It is steamy in Washington, D.C. It is Washington, D.C. in the summer, but there's still a lot going on. Yes, the Senate is about to pass in secret the biggest health bill since Obamacare, except they are doing this totally behind closed doors. Nobody knows what's in it, not even most Republicans. It would impact 1/6 of the American economy, but Republicans just want to try to sneak it through. We can't let them get away with it. Donald Trump attacking Robert Mueller, calling what Mueller is up to a witch hunt, but Donald Trump admitting that he is indeed under investigation. We got so much to talk about, and we are glad to see you this morning on Free Speech TV. Good to join you, of course, most of you on YouTube, youtube.com/The Bill Press Show. Oh, man, pardon me. And a great big hello to all of our friends out there in Chicago on WCPT. Yes, we'll get right into the news today. Remember, we want to hear from you on Twitter @BP Show. But first, we have a breaking news. Is that right?
No, I wanted to mention something really quick because yesterday was Father's Day.
Yes.
So I went out with the family. We went out for a nice long hike out in Shenandoah National Park. Mm-hmm. And after it was over, we went to a brewery that was just outside of the park. And I looked like death because we had just hiked 11 miles. And across the parking lot, I hear this guy go, "Hey, I know you. I watch Bill Press every morning." So it was our friend Nick, who watches every morning on part of our Free Speech family.
All right.
So he was
cool.
They're out there, man.
Nick.
All
right, Nick, here's to you.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he's out there.
Good.
I wish I had maybe had a shower before I met one of our people who were, watching the show.
Did you give him a Bill Press T-shirt?
I didn't have a Bill Press T-shirt with me. I was just happy to have any clean T-shirt to wear at that point. But we went inside the brewery.
That's really funny.
And
I'm telling you, you have to be careful because that's why I am always on my best behavior.
Always,
because you never know when they're going to pop up.
He had just missed a complete meltdown from one of my children, right? Because they were just exhausted and tired, and they sort of threw a fit. But he just missed that, thankfully. But they're always out there.
All right. A good story. Hello, Nick. Nice to see you. Yes, indeed. Where do we start today? Let's start. Oh, by the way, yes, I can't. I have to mention this. You will be pleased to know that, according to the White House, this is Technology Week. Yes, indeed. They're up to this little game now. They're naming each week. Each week has a theme. Remember, it was Infrastructure Week 2 weeks ago. And, of course, they did nothing about infrastructure. Last week was Workforce Development Week. And, of course, other than the speech that Donald Trump gave, not in the Midwest somewhere, I forget now, that was maybe Wisconsin. That was or Ohio. That was nothing else happened on workforce development this week. This is Technology Week. There is a meeting at the White House today with high tech leaders who are coming, even though most of them don't have any time for Donald Trump. But when the President of the United States invites you to a meeting, you usually show up. At any rate, that's the only thing we know that's happening related to Technology Week. Just want you to know, celebrate Technology Week. But on the question of the investigation, it went round and around and around. Now, remember, it started last Thursday or Friday, when Donald Trump himself tweeted out that I am under investigation by the same guy for firing James Comey. This is Donald Trump speaking. I'm under investigation for firing James Comey by the guy who told me to fire James Comey. So he said, again, the key words are under investigation, which is really stunning when you think about it, because for months, remember, Donald Trump and the White House were saying, there may be an FBI investigation, but I am not subject to the investigation. Remember, he got James Comey to admit that 3 times and put that in his letter when he fired Comey, that 3 times Comey had told him at that time Donald Trump was not under investigation. Then the White House, the Washington Post rather, reported that they had 5 sources that told them that Robert Mueller, in fact, was investigating Donald Trump now for obstruction of justice, that he had scheduled, at least he was looking into it, he had scheduled interviews with the Director of National Intelligence, Stan Coates, with the Director of the NSA, Mike Rogers, and with the guy who just retired as Deputy Director of the NSA, Richard Legett. And Mueller was going to be talking to them probably this week. Again, Washington Post reporting this last Thursday. Mueller was going to be talking to them this week about reports that the Washington Post had reported earlier that Donald Trump asked each of them to intercede with James Comey to try to get him to drop the FBI investigation. And when Comey refused, then Donald Trump fired him. So with that report, Donald Trump is under investigation. Then the White House went into denial mode. No, this is not true. The Washington Post has it wrong. They're just quoting anonymous sources. The president is not under investigation. That went on for 24 hours. And then the next morning, so it was Friday morning, yes, Donald Trump came out with that tweet saying, I am under investigation for firing James Comey by the guy who told me to fire James Comey. So as Bill Maher said Saturday night, it's sort of like, I mean, Donald Trump is like, it's like Watergate, except Donald Trump is Deep Throat. He's the one who's telling us he's under investigation. So is he or isn't he? Now his attorney, Jay Sekulow, comes out yesterday on he did all the talk shows, but he got, trying to deny it, got caught up in his own circular thinking, if you will, if not lies. So here he starts out with Mike Wallace on Fox News. Well, now listen very carefully, because here he is. Twice he'll say Donald Trump is under investigation.
Now he's being investigated by the Department of Justice because the special counsel, under the special counsel regulations, reports still to the Department of Justice, not an independent counsel. So he's being investigated for taking the action that the Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General recommended him to take by the agency who recommended the termination.
All right. So he's being investigated. He's being investigated by the same guy who asked him to terminate the investigation. That's Jay Sekulow. But then his mission is to deny Trump is under investigation. So Chris Wallace calls him on that.
We have not received, nor are we aware of any investigation of the President of the United States.
Sir, you just said
period.
2 times that he's being investigated.
No. The context of the tweet, I just gave you the legal theory, Chris, of how the Constitution works. If, in fact, it was correct that the president was being investigated, he would be investigating for taking action that an agency told him to take.
Yeah, you see the circular logic, circular thinking. The fact is, he is under investigation. We know that from the reports of the Washington Post. They haven't been wrong about anything yet. Robert Mueller is conducting he's the special counsel. The investigation, we've talked about this for the last couple of weeks, has shifted now. They're still looking into collusion. In fact, Angus King yesterday said they're only 20% into collusion with the Russians. They're still looking into that, but right now, for the time being, the focus has shifted from collusion to obstruction. He's got these interviews scheduled. Now, he could very well, Robert Mueller, talk to them, explore this, and say, there's not sufficient evidence to continue this investigation. But for the moment, Donald Trump is under investigation, criminal investigation, for obstructing justice, no matter how much Jay Sekulow tries to turn it around. And by the way, one other point on that, which more and more people are starting to talk about, recognize, and to talk about, and that is, remember what this is all about. What this is really all about is, and where it started, the investigation. We know the Russians hacked into the American election system. We know that there were a couple of dozen states where they tried to actually bore down into the election system of those states and some particular counties. We know that happened, and we know why, that they were trying to flip the election to Donald Trump. What we don't know, and the original FBI investigation was about, did anybody on the Trump team help the Russians at their effort and maybe tell them, you ought to look at this, you ought to look at this, you ought to target this, or here are some lines you ought to use. That we still don't know. But here's the point. So far, Donald Trump has not said one damn thing about the Russians hacking our election. He hasn't said it's a problem. He hasn't said it's should be of concern to all Americans, Republicans and Democrats, independents, all of us. He hasn't said it was wrong that they did this, and we know that they did this. He didn't say. He promised us within 90 days. The response was the administration was going to come up. They weren't going to talk about it now, but within 90 days, we're going to have a plan to fight for cybersecurity, to fight cyber warfare. Never said anything about it. 90 days has long passed. Never came up with anything. We found out that the Russians tried to hack the French elections. Donald Trump didn't condemn them for that, didn't say anything about that. He has been totally, totally silent on Russian attempts to undermine American democracy. You do have to ask why. One other Donald Trump-related story. You remember a couple of weeks ago, Donald Trump went on the warpath after he came back from his trip to Saudi Arabia and to the Middle East. Went on the warpath against Qatar, which turned out to be, by the way, fake news that again, through Russian hackers, they put out the word that Qatar had been financing terrorist groups. Saudi Arabia and the UAE and some other Arab countries said they were going to cut off all business, doing any business, going to boycott Qatar, wouldn't allow anybody to fly in or out of there on their planes. They turned against Qatar, and Donald Trump took sides with Saudi Arabia and the UAE against Qatar. New York Times reporting this morning, there might be a good reason why. And this is maybe the first instance where Donald Trump's business deals are going to determine and influence his foreign policy decisions. That's why way early on, even the Wall Street Journal said Donald Trump had to divest himself from his business. He refused to do so. Now the White House is saying and the Justice Department, it's perfectly okay for him to continue these businesses and to keep making money from foreign governments, starting with his hotel here in Washington, D.C. So New York Times reporting this week that, in fact, for the last 20 years, Donald Trump has done all kinds of business deals with Saudi Arabia. He's also got a great big golf course and making a lot of money in the UAE. He has tried for years to get a big hotel or a big office tower, some big project going in Qatar, and Qatar has not allowed him to do so. And so just maybe Donald Trump is siding with the Saudis and the UAE because he's making money off of those two countries and he's not making any money over Qatar. Wow. All of that Donald Trump news this morning. There is other news. Yes, indeed. We can't lose sight of the fact that while we may be focusing on the investigation or in the Cosby trial or other stuff, the Senate very quietly is trying to pass a health care bill. Remember the first word when that terrible House bill came over to the Senate, everybody said, oh, the Senate bill, the House bill is dead on arrival in the Senate. The Senate's never going to pass anything like this. Democrats will never allow it to happen. Well, Mitch McConnell had a different plan. Very quietly, he's appointed maybe half a dozen Republican senators, and we've had people in the studio here telling us about this and warning us about this. And very quietly, they've been shaping a health care bill in the Senate, which from what we hear is every bit as bad as the House bill. Mitch McConnell has said over the weekend, he wants to get this out of the Senate before they break for July 4th, which is either this week or next week, that they'd have a vote. And the bill will go, this bill, which would repeal Obamacare, take health care away from some 22 million Americans, impact 1/6 of the American economy, will go right to the floor with no hearings, no public hearings at all, not even closed-door hearings where other senators can come and find out what's in it. Nobody has seen the bill yet except for those senators who are working on it. And again, there'll be no hearings. The vote's going to go directly to the floor. They're going to do it under reconciliation, so all they need, this is their plan, if they get away with it, are 51 votes. They won't need any Democratic votes at all. And Donald Trump keeps complaining about Democrats being obstructionists. They're not obstructionists in this case. It's Mitch McConnell trying to sneak this thing through. Even some Republicans are concerned, saying we should not vote for this. Marco Rubio was quoted over the weekend as saying we should not vote on a health care bill that hasn't had any public hearings at all. So the public members of the public and members of the Senate don't even know what's in it. Some Democrats spoke out about this over the weekend. Congressman James Clyburn from South Carolina.
Democrats are eager to work with our Republican colleagues to deliver accessible and affordable quality health care to all Americans. But Republicans must set aside their repeal efforts.
And James Clyburn says, we could come up with a bill that would work, but this Republican plan, from what we hear, just goes in the opposite direction.
Passing the Republican bill would turn the clock back on civil rights and humaneness.
And Bernie Sanders weighing in as well. It's a secret mission to destroy health care.
Now, in the Senate, what you have is I believe it is 10 Republicans working behind closed doors to address 1/6 of the American economy. That's what health care is. Republicans, the average Republican doesn't even know what's in that legislation.
Yeah, right. The average Republican doesn't even know what's in it. Imagine if Democrats tried to do that when they were in control. I mean, and remember, it took like 2 years and countless hearings before they passed Obamacare. Republicans had every chance to offer amendments, to debate the issue. Remember, they had those great big town halls. It was that whole open legislative process. This is totally in secret, and in fact, which would imperil and certainly influence one of the largest segments of the American economy. Republicans, again, all trying to do it in secret. Two other big items of news that have nothing to do with politics over the weekend that I thought were worth kicking around. The idea that Amazon, which is so big anyhow, right? Jeff Bezos, brilliant businessman, the founder of Amazon, the owner. He bought the Washington Post, and he's let the Washington Post alone in the sense that he's not exercising any control over it, editorial control. He's not dictating what the paper has to write about or what to say or what they have to cover. He has just given them more resources to do even a better job than they did in the past. He's the dream where most newspapers are folding these days. He's what people in the newspaper business, this is their wet dream, to have somebody like Bezos who's so wealthy and just says, well, what do you need? Do you need to hire 8 more investigative reporters? Fine, here's the money. Just go do it. So Bezos, who's so creative and so inventive and such a visionary, looking at how to expand. Amazon, which started with books, right? Now you can buy, God, I don't know. Is there anything, Jamie, you cannot buy on Amazon?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
I mean, seriously.
It's a one-stop shop.
If you look, at their list, because I buy a lot of books on Amazon, but I always go, when you have to say, like, what part of Amazon do you want to go to?
Right.
The list of things you can buy.
Well, you can go down a wormhole and you get lost. I mean, the thing for me is, I have Amazon Prime. $80 a year, I think, or $100 a year, something like that.
Whatever it is.
And it's great because of the 2-day shipping and just being able to I can find 2 things that I absolutely need, and then I find 3 other things that I'll need in the future, and I just put it in one basket, and boom, it's at my house in 2 days.
compulsive shopping.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you know what? I ordered a book last week from Amazon. I ordered it on Tuesday, and I had it on Wednesday, which is to me is too fast. Slow down. I like that little anticipation of waiting for something I've ordered to arrive. I don't. So
what about a drone delivering your book?
Well, that's the point. No. Here's what the drone's going to deliver. The drone's now is going to deliver my arugula or maybe my yogurt, because that's the news. For $13.7 billion, Jeff Bezos, Amazon has bought Whole Foods. Whole Foods, this great grocery chain, the high end, expensive, but great stuff. They got everything. And think about the possibilities here. Combining Amazon with all of its Amazon Prime and its fast delivery and Whole Foods. So here's the way it works. All right? You talk to a seller. Oh, I'm sorry, Alexa. I always get it backwards. You talk to Alexa. You talk to Alexa and you place your grocery order with Alexa. Right? I want some arugula. I want some more Chobani yogurt, some Diet Pepsi, whatever you're going to get. You get your whole grocery order through Alexa, and then it goes to Whole Foods, which is the drone. Whole Foods, the floor, the roof of the building is the drone landing pad.
There you go.
Right? The order goes up to the roof. Drone picks it up, delivers it by drone to your door. There it is. That, my friends, is the future.
But what they're saying is...
Isn't that amazing?
What they're saying is you might be... And they have the actual Amazon physical grocery stores already now in Seattle.
Yeah, right.
Which I guess they won't need now because they have Whole Foods.
Yeah.
But what they're saying is you can go into these stores... The store will know what your buying preferences are. It'll point out things to you, I guess, on your phone or something. And you'll be able to walk out without actually even having to talk to a teller or use your card, because you're just charged automatically on Amazon. They know when you walk out that door and what you walk out that door with.
It's incredible.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. And so the possibilities are endless, the possibilities of where Jeff Bezos is going with what people said. Why would he buy Whole Foods? No, think about it, incredible opportunities there. And he will take advantage of all of them. You can be sure of that. And the other non-political news of the weekend, of course, is Norristown, Pennsylvania. And after all of that, a hung jury in the Bill Cosby case. Debbie Hines, our legal analyst, is going to be along a little bit later, and we'll talk to her about where this goes from here. Cosby himself came out of the courthouse, and every day he had a small group of supporters there. He's telling them, stay strong.
Stay calm. Do not argue with people. Just keep up the great support. Thank you, Albert.
Yeah, stay strong. And his attorney, Andrew Wyatt, saying, Dr. Cosby, he's back.
Mr. Cosby, power is back. It's back. It's been restored.
Yeah, no, it's not really back. No, it's not.
No,
and boy, I got to tell you, it just one more case is just like the O.J. trial where the justice system fails us. I really don't get it. I thought Andrea Constant is a very believable person. I mean, they do not deny that he drugged her and assaulted her. It just, according to what we've heard from some of the jury members, it was he said, she said, and the defense said that it was consensual. And I just I know all this evidence wasn't presented in this case. This is not just Andrea Constant. There are dozens of women who have told the very same story, and they finally get Bill Cosby in the courtroom. And they're not able to convict. It's sad, 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 as Donald Trump might say. By the way, he hasn't commented on this at all for, I think, a good reason. But at any rate, there probably will be a retrial. It's just all that time, all that money, and all those people whose lives are really wrecked by this guy who see justice not done. What's going on down in Georgia? The big primary tomorrow between Karen Handel and John Ossoff and Karen Handel. The most important of the special elections so far. In a tough district for Democrats, can John Ossoff pull it off? Eliza Collins just got back from Georgia for USA Today, coming in studio to tell us all about it here on this Monday edition of the Bill Press Show. And here we go. It's the last week of the pledge drive. Last week. Absolutely last chance to get on board for Free Speech TV. And boy, I don't have to tell you how important it is or how much we depend on you at Free Speech. We wouldn't be here without you. And just think about all the events of this weekend. I mean, here the big debate this weekend was, is he or is he not under investigation? Of course, we're talking about Donald Trump, the madman in the White House. Now, his lawyer says, no, he's not under investigation, but the Washington Post and Donald Trump himself says, yes, he is under investigation. How do we know? Because the Washington Post did some more great investigative reporting. They have 5 different sources who told them that Robert Mueller, the chief counsel, has lined up interviews with NSA Director Mike Rogers, the Deputy Director of NSA, who just retired, Richard Legett, and also with the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coates, because all 3 of them reportedly were called by Donald Trump and said, can you talk to Jim Comey and get him to drop this investigation? In other words, according to 5 different sources, Donald Trump is under investigation by Robert Mueller, criminal investigation for obstruction of justice. The point is, how do we know that? Because of an independent, freewheeling, hard-hitting journalism that tells the truth, just like Free Speech TV does 24/7. That's why it's so important as part of the resistance to support independent news and journalism, real news, not fake news, and there's no better place than Free Speech TV. 24/7, the only progressive cable channel in this country. So please, make your pledge today as generously as you can. Whatever your monthly pledge, if you can do $5 a month, that's $60, $110 a month, $120, $20 a month, $240 pledge, $30 a month, $360 pledge. And for each of those, we will send you a whole bunch of goodies to show you our appreciation, starting with this pocket Constitution of the United States, which you should always carry around with you, plus a little card for protesters that know your rights in case something happens at a protest. And you need to stand up for your constitutional rights. Make your pledge today at 877-378-8669 or go to freespeech.org. And remember, if you can help us with $1,000, a very special thing like Patricia and Richard from Seattle took advantage of last week, come to Washington. Carol and I will take you out to dinner. We'll have a good time. Come in the next morning, meet the whole crew, and be part of the show here at Free Speech TV. So whatever level you can help, we need your help. We depend on it. Again, we wouldn't be here without you. You can make your pledge right now, please, 877-378-8669, or go to freespeech.org. Thank you for your help, Free Speech TV.
Live video, Bill's commentary, the best clips from the show, all in one place. YouTube.com/The Bill Press Show.
Yes, indeed, The Bill Press Show, live from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Coming to you, shooting out to you all across this great land of ours from our studio on Capitol Hill. We're brought to you today by the International Association of Firefighters. Yeah, who do you call when you get in trouble? Firefighters, your fire department. The good men and women of the fire departments of America on the front lines every day protecting American families. Salute them for their good work. Thank them for being there and for their support of the program under President Harold Schaitberger. You can find out more about their good work at IAFF. That's their website, IAFF.org. By the way, if you are confused by Donald Trump's tweets, you're not the only one. Just to set the record straight, he tweeted from Camp David over the weekend, quote, The new Rasmussen poll, one of the most accurate in the 2016 election, just out with a Trump 50% approval rating. That's higher than Obama's, or O's, as he put it. You might have thought, I didn't know his approval rating was that high. Well, it's not. That was really not true. At least not every poll has it that high. The latest Gallup poll, which we told you about on Friday, was at Trump at 36%. It's also not true that Rasmussen was one of the most accurate polls in 2016. They got it wrong. They said Hillary Clinton was going to win the electoral vote. Of course, they're not the only ones. And also, it's not wrong that his polling numbers are higher than Barack Obama's. Barack Obama actually, on June 16, 2009, had a 50. In June, in other words, of the first year of his presidency, had a 56% approval rating, higher than Donald Trump. So just one more case where can't believe a word he says. Anyhow, we want to focus on Georgia. Start there, at least find out the latest. Eliza Collins just off the plane from Georgia. What's the
I heard she took the midnight train to Georgia. Is that true?
Sorry.
It's Father's Day. I can still get dad jokes in.
Jamie Raskin's group did. He had like 30-something volunteers who took a midnight bus to Georgia.
Oh, nice.
To help out Ossoff, though.
To help Ossoff.
Yeah.
Nice to see you, Eliza. Thank you for coming in.
Good to be here.
So tomorrow's a big day.
It is.
It's been, a month since the primary or whatever?
A little over a month, I think.
Seems like a long time.
Yes.
At any rate. All right. So how's it look? What are the chances for Ossoff to pull it off?
I think he has a very good chance there. I mean, polls show neck and neck. He has the edge in most of the polls, but watch it with polls, as we were just talking about. We have to be careful. But there's a lot of excitement about him, and that, I think, is the big thing. He has a lot of money. There's a ton of ads. There's a ton of signs. But a big thing that I found, and that's kind of what my story is today, is that a lot of the volunteers fueling him are these suburban moms. The 6th District is very wealthy, highly educated. It's these moms who feel guilty about not doing enough for Hillary Clinton, and they are now using all of this time that they would use to do, and they said, they were like, yeah, we're involved in PTA and in soccer and blah, 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 and we're taking that time and we're door knocking. And I went door knocking with a couple of them. And one of them had knocked on 1,500 doors, which is like an insane number of doors. She was extreme, but
yeah.
And she's like, I made a few calls for Hillary.
But now, really, so this is the guilt coming out on that.
It's guilt. And another thing is that they didn't realize it's Georgia. It's red. It's gone red for 40 years. They didn't realize that there were other Democrats in their neighborhood or people who supported the same causes. And so after the election, there was a group of women that got together. There were 11 of them. And now that same group, this is like not that long after, has 500 people on Facebook. And they described it to me. They were like, I walked in and I looked around and I was like, that mom, you are too? Oh my God, you are too? So it's this like underground community in the southern state.
Democrats coming out of the closet in the 6th Congressional District.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, how about that?
It is really interesting to me. Like, I know a lot of people in South Carolina, and South Carolina was obviously Trump country, right? But there's that feeling of helplessness that the Democrats and progressive-minded people in the South feel of just like, oh my God, if you were sort of resigned to feeling like, well, I'm in the South and there's nothing I can do. That feeling is kind of gone because you have to feel like you're part of the process because so often you don't feel like that when you live in the South as a Democrat.
Well, and there was one woman who said Tom Price has won the seat. For a long time, he won by 20-something points in November.
Yeah.
And she said, we've always just said, okay, Tom Price gets it. Every 2 years, Tom Price checks it off. So, yeah, I voted for the Democrat, but, I didn't talk about it. I didn't tell anybody. I wasn't. And she was like, but now we feel like we have a chance. So she was with her son, and she was like, we're here, and we're rallying, and we're door knocking because it feels like something can change.
So what the take that I've had from Georgia, what I've heard from people, is that he does have a chance, but it's all going to depend on turnout. So what kind of a ground game, right, do the Democrats have down there? Are the unions, people putting volunteers in there? I mean, do they really have a plan to get people out to vote?
They do, and they have a ton of money. I mean, I think it's important to talk about this is the most expensive congressional race.
I saw $50 million last year.
Yeah, I've seen that number tossed around.
Yikes.
He alone has $23 million on that's his campaign. So that's not even talking about the outside groups.
Right.
I think that they kicked up spending with her once they saw his numbers. I mean, it is, and you're down there. There are radio ads every time the radio breaks.
Yeah.
And I check different stations, Yeah. And it's commercials for both of them. Lawn signs everywhere. His campaign says he has 11 to 12,000 volunteers. And what he does, which is very strategic, is he does canvas kickoffs. So he'll do 4 a day, where he'll go to a place and meet with, these are in the middle of the day on a weekday. 50 people show up, at one, 25 at another. And he goes and he gives them a little pep talk. And then he sends them out into the 90-degree heat to door knock. And she did meet and greets. It's just a different strategy. She was doing just as many too. When I was there, she had gotten a package at her house with white powder in it, so she had to cancel some of her events. It was the day after the shooting, so sort of this weird.
Yeah.
So it wasn't totally fair to compare the two because she had to cancel for safety, but they're different types of events for sure. His are volunteer. Go out, do this.
So what are the issues? Or is there one issue? And is the issue Donald Trump?
They're really trying not to make that the issue, which is interesting because the primary, that was the issue. And I tried to ask him about it, and he's super on message. And he won't break. He won't, this is for the people of the congressional district. They care about healthcare and the economy. He's definitely going as a moderate. His government waste is something they both are really going after. The economy. They're trying to make Metro Atlanta like a Silicon Valley. So those are some big issues where he might differ from Democrats in other parts of the country. He's super on women's reproductive issues because she was head of the Komen Foundation, took money from Planned Parenthood. So that is something he's really knocked her on.
Right. Which was, that was a huge deal.
Oh yeah,
at the time.
she's the one who said Komen was not going to give any money to Planned Parenthood, and remember she had to resign, right?
Yeah, it was a big deal.
Right.
And so that is something he is really focused on. Obviously, the healthcare bill, and I think that might be where we're seeing the Trump referendum because she supports the American Healthcare Act. And he does not, and this is coming after Trump said that the American Health Care Act
Does she talk about Trump?
No, she does not.
I wouldn't either if I was a Republican.
This is not a district, especially here, is not a district that is friendly to Trump.
No, I saw some outrageous statement by Newt Gingrich over the weekend, something about how dare Democrats, even compete in a district Donald Trump won. Well,
he didn't win by very much.
That's the point I was going to make. Yeah, he barely won. It was not like Tom Price and 20%.
Right. No, he's a different. He won in this district because people voted red. People identified as Republicans, so they voted for the Republican candidate. And of course, people did not like Hillary Clinton. It was not because they liked Trump. At least from the people I was talking to down there. And that sort of was how it felt about Handel. There are definitely people excited for her, but I also had a lot of people say, I'm a conservative. She's conservative. I'm going to vote for her.
Yeah. The other reality here is that, even with all of that, this is not an easy win for Democrats. It's a possible win, but it's a red district. It's Republican, and so a lot of Democrats are bracing for the fact that with all these high hopes built up, that he may not make it.
And if he does win, Republicans will immediately say, okay, well, look how much money he had. He won by 1 point or whatever.
Yeah.
You're really going to have that much money in 2018 in every race. And then they'll say this wasn't a district that was friendly to Trump, even if it was red.
By the way, in fact, in terms of Karen Handel has distanced herself from Donald Trump. John Ossoff hasn't had either Hillary or Bernie come in to campaign for him.
He has Jason Kander today.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it's a different kind of Democrat down there. Jason Kander, remember the ad?
Sure, yeah.
Put a gun together.
Yeah, he was the guy that put the gun together. He also lost.
But people are pinning their hopes on him as that sort of moderate Democrat, and that's Ossoff is trying to play. And I asked him for my story, I found all these Democrats that came out of the woodwork, and I asked him about it. So on message, and he's like, Republicans, Independents, Democrats are coming together to support the candidate. And so I was like, so you're saying it's you, not that, I was just trying. And he was like, they are excited about a change in Georgia.
It's like Democrats aren't necessarily getting super excited about the policy and politics of Jon Ossoff, right? And I think that's fair. He's not going to be a Bernie type of Democrat. He's already said that the minimum wage thing and the single payer thing is not something that he can get behind. And Democrats are just going to have Democrats like that in the party.
Absolutely.
Right. Well,
you know what I
Bernie's
mean?
type wouldn't win there.
Right,
Wouldn't
he wouldn't win.
Well, and that's like the argument, with the whole movement. Right. And when they were trying to unseat, primary out Joe Manchin, it was like Joe Manchin you're not going to be able to go much further left than Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin can barely hold on to a seat in West Virginia. So it's that idea. And people say, even if they've only voted for Democrats, when I ask if they're a Democrat, they say, I'm an independent.
Oh, yeah.
So it's still, and his whole thing is, I'll stand up to either party, I'll work with either party, and they like that.
So all of you down there in the Atlanta area, particularly in that Georgia's 6th district, it's so important. Today, get out there and do what you can. Volunteer for Jon Ossoff, and get out there tomorrow, early and often, to vote for Jon Ossoff, and make sure all your friends and neighbors and family do as well. It's going to be huge. It is a national election.
Oh, it's a completely. There were a lot of national press down there, and this is a week out.
Yeah.
I was there last week.
Yeah, great. But you mentioned now both of them have taken a position on health care. And some people might say, what health care? I thought that health care bill was dead in the Senate. They weren't going to do anything. Actually, yeah, they're moving. The only thing, what they're doing, though, is they're doing it all behind closed doors.
They are. And there's frustration from Republicans there, too. They are moving a bill, Senate leadership. We don't know how far along it is. John Thune told reporters, I don't know, before I went to Georgia, so maybe Wednesday, he was talking to us, Tuesday, and he said, we've been sending things back and forth to the CBO to get them scored. The CBO is the Congressional Budget Office. That is who who analyzes and figures out how many people will lose it, how much it'll cost.
Will they wait to vote until it's scored?
They will.
Unlike the House?
He said that. And they also have to, because it has to meet a certain threshold of savings. It's not very high. It's, I think $2 billion or something like that. It's saving, the House bill saved like 100 something. Yeah. It's not very hard, but they can't do it without it. Also, Senate, a little more grown-ups in the room. They've said, we're going to wait to see. And the House got railed. They voted, and then it came out like weeks later, and it was still like 23 million people would lose insurance. So the Senate said they'll wait. Thune said they'll wait. But they're sending things to get, how's this option? How's this option? But the rank and file Republicans have no idea.
How many Republicans are voting on this? Are working on this bill. So how many are like in the smoke-filled room where these decisions are being made?
So there was a working group, interestingly put together by Ted Cruz, who was not the person you'd think would put together a working group.
Yeah, right. Who wants to work with Ted Cruz?
I wrote a story, and it was like, Ted Cruz is trying something new, compromise. But he's working on this. This started when the House was going through. Ted Cruz, of course, is super conservative. He's kind of aligned with the Freedom Caucus. Him, Rand Paul, Mike Lee are the three guys that are going to want this as far right as possible. Well, in the Senate, most people are more in the middle, or even someone like Susan Collins is pretty assumed to be a no because she has a lot of issues with the bill. But that working group had people from different groups, no woman in the beginning. It was 13 people. I kind of think that group's even been scrapped.
Really?
Because when you ask, like, Ted Cruz doesn't know what's in the bill anymore. They don't. Mike Lee doesn't know. Trump invited 14 people last week, but they were different from the group. He had more women. Not clear.
Yeah. Bernie Sanders spoke about this yesterday on Face the Nation, I believe, about this sort of secret cabal.
Now, in the Senate, what you have is you have, I believe it is 10 Republicans working behind closed doors to address 1/6 of the American economy. That's what health care is. Republicans, the average Republican doesn't even know what's in that legislation.
Yeah, Bernie pointing out 1/6 of the American economy affecting this, and the average Republicans, as you just said, don't even know what's in this bill. So when are they going to have their first public hearings?
Also not clear. I don't think there'll be public hearings. They want this.
Well, how can they pass a health care bill like the equivalent of an Obamacare, repeal Obamacare, or a Hillary care that had multiple hearings and not have a hearing? It would go right to the floor for a vote?
That's what everyone's trying to figure out. There are different timelines being thrown around, but it seems that the one they want the most is before July 4th. It's like 2 weeks.
It's this week or next week.
Right. And that means it has to become public. The rest of the Republicans need to see it. If it's not July 4th, they're hoping for the end of August, or before August recess, so the end of July.
But that begs the question, do you really think they can get away with a mammoth bill like this affecting 1/6 of the American economy and take it right to the floor with no public hearings? And I guess if they do that through reconciliation, you can't even offer amendments on the floor, can you?
Can't offer amendments. I don't know what happens to this bill. I mean, I think they can lose 2 votes, and that still brings in Mike Pence as a tiebreaker. Susan Collins is pretty assumed to be a no. She might get on board if they take out the Planned Parenthood defund, but then you lose Cruz, Lee, Rand Paul. You have a bunch of senators who are worried about Medicaid. They want it to slow down, they're trying to stop Medicaid, and they want that to slow down. It's pretty easy to lose 2 votes somewhere. So I don't know. And I do think tomorrow's race won't completely change things, but if Ossoff wins, he is campaigning on this health care. And I think that it'll give some Republicans pause. Can't say they'll stop the bill, but I think behind closed doors, there'll be some conversation, especially someone like Jeff Flake or Dean Heller, who are really vulnerable in these states.
Whatever happened to the promise that we're going to get back into regular order? Mitch McConnell said we're going to do regular order. We're going to do things right by the book. Make sure the bills are posted, 3 days or whatever, so everybody can read them.
It's easy to be regular or say you'll go to regular order when you're not the ones having to push something through. I also think Trump is making things harder for them. He goes out and says stuff, the Senate's going to have a great bill. We're going to repeal Obamacare. And the Senate's like, we haven't written anything. Or Trump said the House health care bill was mean.
I was just going to ask you about that. Yeah. Right. The health care, it was a mean bill because it threw too many people off.
Sorry, did he not have a giant party at the White House to celebrate that bill?
Hello.
That's so cruel and mean.
Right.
And then you're someone like Paul Ryan, and you're like, you made us vote on this. You've rushed the vote on this. Remember, the White House kept getting ahead of the House?
Yeah.
Then they voted, and you're like, so that stuff happens. I don't know what's going on. I think...
And just to be clear, so everyone and again, I remember particularly Ben Wickler from MoveOn.org, the director of the Washington office, was in a couple of weeks ago saying, hey, people, wake up. This is happening. You got to know this is happening. It's happening in secret, but it is happening. Don't think there's nothing happening with healthcare. It is moving, and you got to put a lot of pressure on the Senate. Not certainly in the end, not to let them pass this bill, but right now, not to let them get away with doing it in secret and doing it in such a way that I believe this is true. The way they're planning it right now, they do not need one Democratic vote.
They don't.
If they hold on to their own, right?
And they won't get one Democrat. But if they can hold on, there are 52 Republicans. They need 51 votes, but Mike Pence can count as a vote. Mm-hmm. So they can lose 2. Mm-hmm. They think they'll lose probably 2. But they can't lose 3. And that's a really hard... Ted Cruz and Susan Collins are pretty different Republicans.
Right. And then it goes back to the House. Now, again, the original thought that whatever the Senate, if it were to pass a bill, would be so different from the House bill that there would be no way the two could get together. That's gone, isn't it?
That's gone.
I mean, the Senate bill is going to be as bad, if not worse, than the House bill. Is the point I'm making? Correct?
I think the Senate bill is going to be more moderate.
From what we've heard.
I think they are going to put more money into it. I think Medicaid, they will not pass a bill that is as quick on Medicaid. They're going pre-existing conditions. I think will be more. There'll be more money for that. They might. Sounds like they probably won't scrap the thing. The House bill, basically, you could scrap pre-existing conditions, and they had a pool of money that was supposed to help. Doesn't sound like most senators are okay with that.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be softer on the edges. It's going to be a similar bill with probably more money to try and backstop things.
And it's still probably going to mean 22, 23 million people lose their health care.
I mean, I have no idea on that because we
wait and see
we don't know
what
what's
the
in the bill.
CBO says. But
right.
Yeah.
Less people will be insured, but I have no clue on the number.
Okay. Now, finally, can you clear up for us? Is the president under investigation or is he not?
We don't know.
But
Trump, according to Trump, yes.
All right, here's the tweet. Friday morning, Donald Trump, tweet, quote, I am being investigated for firing the FBI director by the man who told me to fire the FBI director. Witch hunt! That sounds like...
It sounds like he's saying he's under investigation. I don't know. What was it, the Washington Post that reported? They had a lot of sources. Trust the Washington Post. I have no doubt they have high vetting of their sources, saying he's being investigated for obstruction of justice.
And then Trump's attorney, of course, hits the talk shows yesterday to say, no, he's not under investigation.
But what Trump's attorney points to is the fact that Comey said Trump was not under investigation.
At that time.
Right. And that was something Comey...
For collusion.
Right. Comey made sure when he was talking, he said, at the time, collusion. And then when Comey's thing was over, you felt like Trump was probably under investigation for obstruction of justice.
You really did.
We walked away. And Comey knew what he was saying.
Yeah.
He knows what he's saying.
But by the way, the other thing that where Donald Trump's just being too cute by half here. So I'm being investigated for firing the FBI director by the man who told me to fire the FBI director. Well, he's talking about Rod Rosenstein, deputy AG. Mm-hmm. Rosenstein, according to that phony memo, right, which Donald Trump requested, said you ought to fire James Comey for the Hillary, the way he handled the Hillary emails.
Which is an important point. The memo is tough on Comey. He doesn't in there say you should fire him.
Right.
Remember that is like a whole...
But he provides that as the excuse.
Right.
Which Donald Trump, allegedly used. Then Donald Trump says, no, I fired him because I wanted to get rid of that Russian thing. So he's not being investigated for the reasons that Rod Rosenstein wrote
he's not being
in
investigated
his
for
memo.
Hillary Clinton.
No, he's being investigated. I believe Donald Trump is right. He is under investigation for obstructing justice.
And that's those conversations that Comey talked about.
Right.
In, can you let this go? Mike Flynn's a good guy. I would like your loyalty. Those types of things that we heard from Comey. I think it's an example of Trump getting ahead of himself. And this is something we see all the time. His comms team goes and says, blah, blah, blah. And Trump says, nope, that's actually... firing Comey.
I said it earlier. Bill Maher said it Saturday Night Best. It's like Donald Trump is his own deep throat.
Yeah,
This is the Bill Press Show.
You taught him how to hit a baseball.
Just like that. Say hi!
How to hit a receiver. The strike zone. The net. You taught him how to hit the upper corner. You even taught him how to hit the open man. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit?
you everything you need to fight the Trump administration. This is The Bill Press Show, live at youtube.com/The Bill Press Show.
Donald Trump says, I'm under investigation. His attorney says, no, he's not. Who's telling the truth here? What are we to believe? Hello, everybody. I believe he's under investigation. Hey, great to see you today. It is The Bill Press Show on a Monday, June 19. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the program, and welcome to the news of the day. Like it or not, hope you had a good weekend. Ready to dive in for another round of updates on what's happening here in Washington, around the country, and around the globe as we reach out to you from our studio on Capitol Hill. And the media, again, getting a lot of attention and getting a lot of flack, particularly from those on the right about the mainstream media led by the President of the United States. We've got our great media watchdog on the left, Media Matters for America. Matt Gertz is a senior fellow at Media Matters and a good friend of the program and a regular guest, and is back this morning. Hello, Matt.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right. Nice to see you. Everything good?
Yeah, things are going well. It was
right.
Normal weekend.
A normal weekend. Donald Trump tweeting away.
Happy Father's Day, everyone. He got 50% in the Rasmussen poll, so he was very happy.
We thought that he'd go to Camp David, they might take his phone away, but no, he took his phone.
Yeah, must have great service down
there. Good Wi-Fi,
out there. I know. I was impressed up there in the mountains, Catoctin Mountains, I think.
Catoctin Mountains.
Catoctin Mountains.
Absolutely.
Anyhow, we get right to all of that with Matt, the news of the day. But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. Hey, boy, it's hot out there.
It is.
How hot is it? Well, I'll tell you, in Phoenix, Arizona, there is a dangerous heat wave on its way. It is expected to climb up to 112 degrees. And that was what it was yesterday, and then 116 degrees today. Here's the thing. Back in 1990, Phoenix had this hottest day on record, 122 degrees. It was so hot that they had to shut down the airport. And they are bracing for a similar situation. The asphalt gets so hot that the plane's tires just sort of, they can't really get much traction. The asphalt essentially will move with the tires of the plane, right? So this is a problem that you'd think that Phoenix would have had figured out because it gets hot in Phoenix. But they're saying if it gets that hot today, they're going to have to shut the airport down, which could disrupt travel for a lot of folks.
Can you imagine? You land and you just get stuck.
Just keep going.
Fun story. I'm supposed to fly to Phoenix on Wednesday for a 4-day conference.
Oh,
so
boy.
We'll see how that goes.
Oh, boy. Well,
you ever been to that airport?
I have.
It's awful.
Sky Harbor is not a great airport.
Well, I guess I'll find out. It's only supposed to be 119 when I go, so that should be better. It's a dry heat. I'm told it's a dry heat.
It's a dry heat.
That's what everyone keeps telling me, and I keep saying famous last words.
Yeah, pack your shorts if you're going to be going to Phoenix. Just be careful out there. Stephen Hines is a man who lives in central Pennsylvania. In 2013, he went to the doctor complaining about a persistent pain in his right testicle. Well, the doctors went in and said that it needed to be removed. It was nothing major. I mean, all things considered. All things considered.
Major to me.
Here's the problem, though. The doctors went in. They had a successful surgery to remove his left testicle. They took the wrong one off, which is not good.
I hate when that happens.
Don't you hate when that happens? Well, he sued the doctors, and the jury came back and awarded him $875,000 at the end of last week. Well, that's the thing. This is now apparently the price of a testicle, not even $1 million.
No, it's the price of your manhood.
So he still had to lose the right testicle because it was still so painful. So he is without testicles now. But that is what the jury came back with, said that the loss of that one healthy testicle is worth $875,000.
Ball don't lie.
Ball don't lie.
Glad we could get that testicle-related story in this morning.
Yeah, you know.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Bill Press Show. Great to see you on this Monday, June 19. Hope you had a great weekend. Celebrated Father's Day in style. We're coming to you live today with the news of the day from our studio on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. Joining you on YouTube, youtube.com/The Bill Press Show, on Free Speech TV, of course, and out in the greater Chicago area on WCPT. Thanks so much for being with us today. Look forward to hearing from you what you think about the events of the day on on Twitter at BP Show. Yes, take Twitter away from Donald Trump. Use it yourself at BP Show. Matt Gertz is here, Senior Fellow for Media Matters for America. Donald Trump, Matt, defending over the weekend his use of Twitter, saying people don't like it because he has access independently around the MSM to 100 million people following him on Twitter. Really?
No, I mean, that's a dramatic overstatement, as is typical for Donald Trump. I don't really know that. I have heard very few reporters say, I wish we didn't have Donald Trump tweeting. It does provide insight into what the president is thinking on a moment-by-moment basis. It is the fact that what he is thinking is fairly terrifying that tends to cause all the problems. In the end, I think it's going to end up being worse for him than it is for anybody else, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, and Sean Spicer has told us, remember, that presidential tweets... What are we doing here? Okay. That presidential tweets are official presidential pronouncements.
Well, I mean, they have to be. You can't sort of make a distinction between the medium and say, one of these is real and one of these doesn't count.
Right.
That just doesn't make any sense. Reporters need to pay attention to them as statements from the president, no matter how weird that is.
Right. So when the president says, I'm under investigation, it's got some meaning.
You would think so. I mean, it should be hard to walk back. I am under investigation, and pretend that doesn't really mean anything.
It proved to be hard to walk back when Jay Sekulow, the president's attorney, did his best this weekend. After Donald Trump on Friday, Washington Post on Thursday says he is under investigation for obstruction of justice. The White House spent like 24 hours saying, no, he's not. Friday morning, Donald Trump says, I am under investigation. They send the attorney out, Jay Sekulow, on the Sunday shows yesterday to say, no, he's not, except he is. He can't get it straight. So let's listen to this exchange. Here's on Fox News Sunday, where, listen very carefully, twice he says he is under investigation.
Now he's being investigated by the Department of Justice because the special counsel, under the special counsel regulations, reports still to the Department of Justice, not an independent counsel. So he's being investigated for taking the action that the Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General recommended him to take by the agency who recommended the termination.
Perfect.
He gets caught up in his words. So twice he says he is under investigation. So then Chris Wallace follows up, because now he says he's not under investigation. Here again, Jay Sekulow and Chris Wallace.
We have not received, nor are we aware of any investigation of the President of the United States.
Sir, you just said
period.
2 times that he's being investigated.
No. The context of the tweet, I just gave you the legal theory, Chris, of how the Constitution works. If, in fact, it was correct that the president was being investigated, he would be investigating for taking action that an agency told him to take.
Ridiculous. Such circular thinking, logic, whatever.
I'm starting to think that the president may not have assembled a legal dream team to defend him.
No, you don't.
I mean, between this guy and Bill O'Reilly's lawyer who handled Trump's divorce cases, like this might not end up working out too well for him.
Yeah. It just seems to me if you cut through this, and not to mention that the Washington Post hasn't been wrong yet with anything they've reported about the Trump White House. He's under investigation. Yeah, or at least this. At least we can conclude that Mueller has started looking into possible obstruction of justice. He may conclude there was none.
Totally possible.
But he's looking at it.
Yeah, that does seem to be the case. I think Comey seemed to very strongly hint at the fact that while the president was not under investigation for collusion at the time that he was FBI director, that that was not really still the case.
For collusion, still the case, but now for obstruction.
Right.
Yeah, right. So I think you could still say, probably, that he's not under investigation for colluding, he himself for the collusion, but he's certainly, he himself is being looked at for possible obstruction. All right, I want to get to the media story of the weekend. There she was, the new star of NBC. Who's she going to start with? Let's start with maybe the most important interview we could possibly get. Well, the first one, the most important, would be Vladimir on the planet. First would be Vladimir Putin. Who is the equal stature with Vladimir Putin for Megyn Kelly to interview? Really? Alex Jones? Here's Megyn Kelly apologizing in advance for doing this interview.
Some thought we shouldn't broadcast this interview because his baseless allegations aren't just offensive, they're dangerous. But here's the thing. Alex Jones isn't going away.
Sufficient reason for giving Alex Jones that kind of exposure?
So I think what Megyn Kelly's
Sandy
doing
Hook's
there,
a hoax? Yeah.
I think what she's doing there is basically trying to take all of the criticism that she has received for this interview and file it all under they don't want us to do it and get to the bottom of the truth, which is not accurate. There are plenty of people, Media Matters among them, who said, yes, Alex Jones is a very important topic. Yes, because of his relationship with Donald Trump, he is a worthy subject for a major news magazine show. But the way that Kelly was going about it, which in its early stages seemed to be very much an attempt to do like a head-to-head interview with him, was probably the least likely way to actually expose who Alex Jones is. He's a conspiracy theorist who is very comfortable lying about everything he's ever said in the past. Those interviews are incredibly tough to actually, get to what he is doing and why it matters. So following that, there was a wide range of criticism of what Megyn Kelly was doing from the Sandy Hook families and from many others.
Yeah.
And in response, NBC really went into overdrive to try to curtail that criticism. They basically told everyone, look, we know you're mad now, but when this segment comes out, you will all be satisfied with the result, which is basically a way of saying, okay, we heard the criticism, and now we're going to cut this segment into something that is as brutal to Alex Jones as possible. And I think that they were largely successful at that. They really downplayed the interview with Kelly as much as they could. It took up a very small percentage of the overall segment. Instead, there was a pretty decent explanation of Jones's shtick, of his relationship with Donald Trump. I think if you're a sort of entry-level person who doesn't really know anything about Alex Jones, you probably came away from this thinking, wow, this is a pretty dangerous guy, and it's a problem that he's close to the president. Now, a couple of criticisms that we and others are still making, it didn't actually really break any news. Like, there was nothing really new in the piece. It was a summary of Alex Jones, which, again, is good if you have no idea who he is.
Mm-hmm.
But the sort of bigger problem is that the segment doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? It exists amidst what has been a very successful effort by Alex Jones to take control of the narrative, to spin all of this as Megyn Kelly taking advantage of him and trying to smear him, and NBC taking him out of context. He's used this very clearly to build his own brand with his own audience, and that's largely because NBC had no idea at all how to handle him. From the very beginning, from when they sort of teased out on last Sunday's show that this interview was happening and the first interview clips, they have been on the defensive every step of the way. He has been, to a similar extent, the Sandy Hook families have been the ones who are running this story. NBC has been woefully unprepared. And that's really kind of shocking because if you're doing a story about Alex Jones, you should know that this is how he operates. You should know that he is a master propagandist, that he is really brilliant at manipulating the media to do his bidding. And if you aren't prepared for that, if you don't realize that this is not just a one-off segment, but in fact you need to have an overall press strategy for how to deal with the thing from top to bottom, you're going to lose. He's going to win. I think the 3.5-4 million people that probably saw this show last night came away with a decent understanding of who Alex Jones is. I think that in the larger media sphere, on the internet, I think Alex Jones was probably the winner.
Folks, I just need y'all to know that we do have the tapes. I want to make sure everybody has the tapes. Anytime that people start talking about Alex Jones, I am here to make sure that everybody gets the real truth about what's going on. So, Matt, I appreciate you being here to talk about Alex Jones the way you were talking about Alex Jones, but we do have the tapes. We're going to expose you. We're going to expose Bill Press. We're going to expose Media Matters. We're going to make sure we get to the bottom of this.
He's not bragging.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, the idea that he's not going away, I find that the lamest possible excuse for giving him that exposure on NBC.
Of course he's not going away. If he's on NBC,
yeah, right.
He's got a bigger platform.
Disgusting, evil man. And that was also disgusting, I thought, was that the photo they put out of the shot of Megyn Kelly and Alex Jones driving along in the car,
And that's the sort of thing that makes me think that NBC was just unprepared for the sort of PR aspects of this. You don't do the glossy
they're out
photo
having a
shot
good
with the
time,
crazy
big
conspiracy
smiles
theorists.
on their face and everything. Yeah, right. Imagine. Okay, I'm telling you. Now, we loved the story that you did. Okay. While we're talking about, I guess, former Fox stars, Bill O'Reilly. Peter, you reported this morning. Bill O'Reilly now says he's going to come out. He's bouncing back. He also says, by the way, he's going to have some details about his firing that's going to be explosive that nobody has heard about so far. God knows what that is. Can't wait to hear that. But that he's coming up with his own little newscast now online or a podcast or whatever.
He's expanding the O'Reilly website, more or less. This is sort of what he's been doing. He's basically turned out a podcast in the months since he was fired from Fox News. Fired, of course, after a series of allegations that he had sexually harassed Fox News personalities and employees over a period, multiple over a period of several years. This was obviously something that Fox News was aware of since they had been paying off the women who had accused Bill O'Reilly of these things. But once it all sort of came out into light after a great expose by the New York Times, that became a problem because after that, of course, came the advertiser boycotts that started up, which Media Matters, of course, played a role in.
So do his followers go with him? His former viewers go with him?
I mean, Bill O'Reilly's average, viewer is like a 60, 70-year-old conservative guy.
White male.
Yeah, I'm skeptical that that's an audience that's going to jump well into podcasts. I mean, it seems to be sort of largely an audience of people who have Fox News on all of the time and tune in to O'Reilly as sort of the capstone of the day. But I think this is similar to the sort of phenomenon that happened around Glenn Beck, where he was pushed out of Fox News. I don't think that his audience stayed the same, but he was able to monetize it better because he could just sell it as subscriptions and sort of make the money that way. Then again, given the sort of large cutbacks in the series of firings of top executives at the Blaze, that doesn't seem to be a great long-term plan. Talent is not always the best at managing large businesses. So we'll see if this O'Reilly thing actually happens, or if he gets bored and decides to wander away with his millions of dollars that he got for agreeing to leave.
The Glenn Beck analogy is really interesting because Glenn Beck, when he started the Blaze, you're right. Like right now, they've got some real problems, and I'm not even sure how much longer they're going to be around. But, I mean, it was ambitious, and it was fairly savvy at the time in terms of tapping into what they sort of...
And fairly successful.
And fairly successful at the beginning, yeah. It sort of got pretty bloated and has turned into something that's pretty hard to manage.
And to sort of, bring it back full circle, Glenn Beck very obviously was basing a lot of his sort of business strategy on Alex Jones. Jones started complaining back in 2009, 2010. This guy on Fox News is stealing my shtick. Like, he is basically taking all of my, he didn't call them conspiracy theories, but they were, and bringing them to the Fox News audience. And he was, sort of by turns boasting about this and being sort of annoyed by it. But then that's the sort of Alex Jones, Glenn Beck strategy isn't one that fits very well into a broader media outlet because, in Beck's case, all of the advertisers abandoned him as well because of how crazy the things that he was saying were. And so, like Alex Jones, he started his own thing with his own associated news outlet that was online, that was based online, and his own product line. This is how Alex Jones makes all of his money, is on like vitamin supplements and bizarre things like that. And Alex Jones similarly had a wide range of products that he endorsed, including his own line of jeans. And his
that's right.
The jeans. The
Glenn Beck jeans.
I think it's the 1781 line. It's something linked to the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence, because that's sort of Beck's thing.
1791 Supply and Company.
That's it. Right.
All right. It's Media Matters. MediaMatters.org. Check it out for the truth, the real news, not the fake news, and real facts, not alternative facts. We were struck by your story that in light of the shooting last week in Alexandria, Virginia, Republican members of Congress in their final practice before the Thursday night congressional baseball game. Steve Scalise, by the way, listed still in serious condition, but doctors do say his condition has improved somewhat. Thank God. Your story, headline: Conservatives need to cut the BS and stop exploiting a tragedy to blame the left. Yes, immediately led by Newt Gingrich and others. After the shooting, they said, well, it's clear the people with blood in their hands are Democrats because of their red-hot rhetoric, and the mainstream media because they have perpetuated and given Democrats a platform to spew their hateful rhetoric. What's the truth?
Well, first of all, I want to give credit where it's due on that piece. That's my great colleague, Christina Lopez, not me.
Okay. Media matters.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
But,
all right. Very good. Very good. No, give credit where credit's due.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I think that the what conservatives have done here is like pretty obvious and kind of gross. They tried to turn the entire conversation into one where the media is somehow encouraging violence, largely by reporting on Trump's ties to Russia. It's a pretty obvious and blatant attempt to get everyone to shut up about what has been an incredibly damaging storyline for the president. It's cynical, it's pretty despicable, and it's overwhelmingly obvious. They have been doing everything they can to curtail that story, and this is just sort of their latest way into it. But blaming the mainstream media was a big part of it, but never with any like actual examples of wrongdoing. The sort of list of people doing, liberals who are using extreme rhetoric is always celebrities and not actually members of the mainstream media. So they're taking on this argument without having the horses to back it up. Like they can't actually demonstrate that the press is doing anything wrong except by broadly focusing on Russia. And so this is what they're doing instead. I think there are times when you can make these sorts of claims that, there is some sort of link between the rhetoric that happens in the media and, a terrible act of violence like this. But generally when that happens, you literally have someone saying, yeah, I did this because this media person, said this thing, which, going back again to Alex Jones with the Pizzagate case, where Alex Jones and others in the sort of fringe right were claiming that There was a D.C. pizzeria through which Hillary Clinton and her close associates were running a child sex slavery ring. Obviously false, like just blatantly so, but they sort of ran with this for a period of several months, causing tremendous harassment of the pizzeria, culminating with someone with a gun going in there, looking for the children, firing it off, and then saying, yeah, like I heard it on Alex Jones that we should investigate what's going on here, and so I did.
Yeah, but years earlier, I forget the name of the organization.
Byron Williams Tides Foundation. No. Yes, I think
the Tides Foundation.
Yes.
Thank you. Glenn Beck. Again, Glenn Beck, a guy they picked up in Oakland with an arsenal in his card, headed for the Tides Foundation in San Francisco because Glenn Beck had said that they were the enemy of Western civilization because they were supporting action on climate change. And this guy was going over with the intent of walking in there and blowing them all away.
And that's the sort of case where, like, there's no way that he would have tried to target that if Glenn Beck hadn't been talking about the Tides Foundation because no one else was. That was like a topic solely contained to Glenn Beck's program and to some extent Alex Jones's. And after the fact, we actually had a reporter who interviewed him extensively, and he literally said, yeah, like I listen to Glenn Beck. I watch Glenn Beck all the time. I listen to Alex Jones. Like, these are the people who sort of guided me. And I was sort of following up on what they had been reporting. So that's a case where you have a fairly direct line from the media outlet to the actual event.
Right. But, there is no doubt that I think we can all accept the fact that the political rhetoric does sometimes get overheated and out of line. But if you are going to start pointing fingers at who's been using the guilty of the red hot rhetoric, it starts at the White House. It starts with Donald Trump during the campaign, right, with all the nicknames that he called people, and calling Obama bad man, sick man, Hillary Clinton, nasty woman, right? I mean, you go down the list, right? I mean, even one of the principal people here was Newt Gingrich over the weekend, right? Or immediately started pointing. When Newt Gingrich was Speaker, he put out a list. In my first book, Spin This, I've got the entire list. I'll never forget it. These are the words you should use if you're talking about Republicans. And these are the words you should use if you're talking about Democrats. And go down the list. They're like lazy, liar, corrupt, sick. So all of these words used for Republicans. So, yeah, words matter, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think you're right. Exploiting this tragedy to make a cheap political shot, and as you point out, try to get Donald Trump off the hook for the Russian investigation.
Yeah, it's a twofer. You sort of hit the enemy that you already had, and you use it to protect the guy that you've been trying to protect.
So you've got to come back and tell us about the tarmac at the Phoenix airport.
Let us know, man.
We'll see if I make it.
I can't get this.
Now I'm worried.
I can't get this out of my mind. But before you do, so what are the rating wars these days in cable TV? What's going on? Is Fox still number one?
Yes, but MSNBC is actually pretty consistently winning. In the demo, on particular evening shows, they're clearly on the rise, with especially Rachel Maddow's show, which has sort of consistently been number one there. I think that all of the changes at Fox News have obviously not benefited them. They've lost a lot of terrible people who were also their top talent. They had a lineup that was incredibly stable for years and years. Now it's been completely sort of thrown up in the air. Tucker Carlson, who a year and a half ago was, the host of the weekend Fox and Friends edition, is now their number one guy in the Bill O'Reilly slot. It's a huge jump. He's not really good enough for that. I mean, his show is pretty mediocre and spends, a lot of time on his particular hobby horses that I think sort of don't have the overwhelming valence in the age of Trump to really get a lot of people watching. The Roger Ailes was a terrible human being, but also very, very good at spotting talent and promoting it and figuring out how to build these shows.
It's a sad reality.
And the reality is now they don't have anyone who's really good at that. They moved the 5 into an evening slot, which doesn't really fit very well. They gave Eric Bolling, who is a pretty mediocre host, a couple of new co-hosts, and to replace that show at 5 p.m. They're just sort of throwing stuff at the wall right now. They don't really know what's going to work and what isn't. I think that especially if Trump continues to decline, I think their ratings will too. I don't think people are going to tune in for let's talk about how great the president is indefinitely.
All right. Fox on the wane. That could be the best news of the day.
I mean, the fact that they got rid of their fair and balanced motto last week shows that they are sort of looking to retool it even on the smallest level.
But it's sort of, it's kind of damned if they do, damned if they don't at this point, because you can't abandon what works without abandoning the audience that you currently have, but there's no way to build on the audience you currently have doing what you've been doing. So as they sort of fall out of the top slot, as a few people are peeled off every day, it's going to put them in a really tough situation.
All right. Matt Gertz, great work. Media Matters, great work. Thanks so much for coming in. It's MediaMatters.org. The Bill Cosby trial surprised a hell of a lot of us, the outcome of it. Debbie Hines will be coming in to talk about that and other legal matters here, our legal expert, here on the Bill Press Show on this Monday. And here we go. It's the last week of the pledge drive. Last week. Absolutely last chance to get on board for Free Speech TV. And boy, I don't have to tell you how important it is or how much we depend on you at Free Speech. We wouldn't be here without you. And just think about all the events of this weekend. I mean, here the big debate this weekend was, is he or is he not under investigation? Of course, we're talking about Donald Trump, the madman in the White House. Now, his lawyer says, no, he's not under investigation, but the Washington Post and Donald Trump himself says, yes, he is under investigation. How do we know? Because the Washington Post did some more great investigative reporting. They have 5 different sources who told them that Robert Mueller, the chief counsel, has lined up interviews with NSA Director Mike Rogers, the Deputy Director of NSA, who just retired, Richard Legett, and also with the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coates, because all 3 of them reportedly were called by Donald Trump and said, can you talk to Jim Comey and get him to drop this investigation? In other words, according to 5 different sources, Donald Trump is under investigation by Robert Mueller, criminal investigation for obstruction of justice. The point is, how do we know that? Because of an independent, freewheeling, hard-hitting journalism that tells the truth, just like Free Speech TV does 24/7. That's why it's so important as part of the resistance to support independent news and journalism, real news, not fake news, and there's no better place than Free Speech TV. 24/7, the only progressive cable channel in this country. So please, make your pledge today as generously as you can. Whatever your monthly pledge, if you can do $5 a month, that's $60, $110 a month, $120, $20 a month, $240 pledge, $30 a month, $360 pledge. And for each of those, we will send you a whole bunch of goodies to show you our appreciation, starting with this pocket Constitution of the United States, which you should always carry around with you, plus a little card for protesters that know your rights in case something happens at a protest and you need to stand up for your constitutional rights. Make your pledge today at 877-378-8669 or go to freespeech.org. And remember, if you can help us with $1,000, a very special thing like Patricia and Richard from Seattle took advantage of last week, come to Washington. Carol and I will take you out to dinner. We'll have a good time. Come in the next morning, meet the whole crew, and be part of the show here at Free Speech TV. So whatever level you can help, we need your help. We depend on it. Again, we wouldn't be here without you. You can make your pledge right now, please, 877-378-8669, or go to freespeech.org. Thank you for your help, Free Speech TV.
It's cancer.
Same great show, new great channel. Stream live video at youtube.com/The Bill Press Show.
Here we go. Monday, June 19 here, The Bill Press Show. Booming out to you live from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, where it is getting to be true to form here, hot and steamy and miserable. It's the swamp. Donald Trump was supposed to fix it. Now, it's just as bad as it always was. It's worse. That's why Donald Trump himself had to escape first visit to Camp David. I can't believe. I bet you he will never go back. It's not the splendor and the gold-plated fixtures that he's used to at Mar-a-Lago. Not that I've ever been to Camp David, but we know it's not that fancy. And so he tried it out. He probably will never go back. We're coming to you live again from Washington, D.C., and joining us in studio with several important matters to discuss, Debbie Hines, trial lawyer and legal analyst. Hi, Debbie. Welcome back.
Good morning, Bill.
We will get right to the news of the day, but it appears that we have some breaking news.
We do indeed. Donald Trump has tweeted this morning.
What's new?
Here's what he says. The Dems want to stop tax cuts, good health care, and border security.
Oh, God. Come on.
No space between that sentence and the next. Their Obamacare is dead with 100% increase in P's. What does that mean?
Probably premiums.
Oh, premiums. I guess he means premiums. God, what a wordsmith. Vote now for Karen H.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go through that one more time. The Dems want to stop tax cuts, good health care, and border security. Their Obamacare is...
Can I just...
Sure.
There is no tax bill.
Right.
There is no health care bill that anybody has seen.
Right.
There is no immigration bill that anybody has seen. So, yeah, just I mean...
Vote now for Karen H.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
No.
Exactly.
All right. Let's tweet out, vote for John O.
There you go. Yeah. Perfect.
Yes.
All right. Debbie, good to see you. A very disturbing event over the weekend when the officer who shot Fernando Castile was acquitted out in St. Paul, Minnesota. Here is Valerie Castile, his mother, and her reaction.
My son loved this city, and this city killed my son, and the murderer gets away.
She continues here about how the city failing to, let her speak.
The system continues to fail black people.
So, Officer Geronimo Hines, we've seen the video. In this case, his girlfriend videotaped the whole thing. What's going on?
You know, honestly, after the Walter Scott case, nothing surprises me when we had a video there of Mr. Scott running away almost 30 feet away from the officer, and the jury ended up with a mistrial. So, you know, it's disheartening, it's upsetting, but it's also just shows the implicit racial bias of juries in these police shooting cases.
It is. I mean, you talk about, we got to get body cams for the police officers. And that was the big sort of rallying cry for a while. And, I mean, my God, that doesn't seem to make much difference if you still have police officers that are getting away with shooting people on camera. We saw it happen.
Well, the body camera issue was just one issue. Everyone was not saying that was going to be the end-all, be-all, because what is definitely needed and what is the tie-in, in addition to the body cameras, is having racial sensitivity training. And I don't know how you do that when the mindset of many police officers are that they're scared to death that a black man or a black woman is going to kill them on a moment's notice, even if they're running away, even if they are politely saying, the way Philando Castile said, "Sir, I have to tell you, I have a gun on me that he was registered to have. So it's just more than just body cameras. And even when you have the video, that's just not enough, because all the officer evidently has to say in order for a jury to acquit is, I felt in reasonable fear of my life. I thought I was going to die.
Well, we talk about the racial bias of some police officers. Be careful there, certainly not all. But the point you're making, too, is what we've seen over and over again, is the implicit racial bias on the part of the members of the jury, right? I mean,
correct.
Meaning, it just seems to me, and I was on a case, and the one time I called for jury duty several times. The one time I was actually on a jury was a case of a white police officer arresting a young black man, didn't shoot him. And we on the jury were supposed to believe, and they had zero evidence against this guy, but we were supposed to believe he was guilty simply because he was young, he was black, and he was a gang member. And most juries would. We didn't.
And what I'll say when I say implicit racial bias of the juries that you're talking about, I mean, the jury in the Castile case was 10 whites, 2 blacks. I think you'd see a different reaction a different verdict if it was 10 blacks, 2 whites.
But I agree, certainly. But I mean, what does this do in terms of, I mean, after Ferguson, after Baltimore, people were thinking, and then there was a movement there, at least for a while. We're going to have some reforms in these police departments, and the Justice Department is going to work with these, right? We're going to come up with a new plan and better screen people, hire better people, train the people that we've got, get rid of some of the bad apples that we got. And now something like this happens, and it's just people don't trust the system, I guess, right?
Well, I mean, most people in cities in the African American community have known that these things have been going on for decades. It is just the fact that there is video out there, that people have cell phones, that they're videotaping, and then that some of the officers are being brought to trial, albeit justice is not being served there. It's only then that we are visibly seeing what's going on.
But so is there any positive, anything?
I mean, it's hard to not lose
change?
hope. It's hard to not lose hope.
It is.
You know?
I mean, it's been going on for so long.
I don't think we can lose hope. I think that we have to keep pressing forward, in terms of these cases. I mean, honestly, it's the fact that the cases are actually being brought is something. I mean, it really is something. At least in the Walter Scott case, he did end up pleading guilty, and he's going to be sentenced later in the year. But the fact that the cases are actually being brought is really something. In the period of 2005 to this year with the Castile case, of all the police shootings that there have been in that 12-year period, there have only been 80 police officers brought to trial, and they're about, for on-duty shootings, and there are about 1,000 each year of on-duty police officer shootings. So the fact that there are some that we're now seeing that are being brought to trial, it's just going to be a very slow process to change what has been decades of systemic racial injustice to young black men and black women by on-duty police officer shootings.
Right. Now, another case of wondering what the hell got in the minds of this jury is the Cosby verdict, right? Or the lack of a Cosby verdict.
Yes, because Mr. Cosby seems to think there was a verdict, he and Camille, but I want to advise them there really hasn't been one.
Right. So his attorney, Andrew Wyatt, leaves the courtroom on Friday triumphant.
Mr. Cosby, power is back. It's back. It's been restored.
His power has been restored, as if this is all over. It's not all over, is it?
No, it's not all over. And I do want to make one correction because everyone seems to think this. Andrew Wyatt is the publicist. Mr. Black Power dude. He's the publicist. He's not. I mean, I have to say this as an attorney. He's not the attorney. He's the publicist. I mean, he's acting like it. You would think so because he's given all the statements and standing there doing all the interviews on the courthouse steps. But the attorney was a lot more gracious in what happened than Mr. Wyatt.
Oh, good for you. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Most people think that because that's how he's appearing, but he is the publicist, the long-standing publicist of Mr. Cosby.
Right. So what happened?
So here's what I want to say, and there are many people that dispute this, but I'm a former prosecutor. I have prosecuted sex offense cases, sexual assault cases. they are always difficult cases. And I wrote in my blog that what the prosecution did in this case is give false high hopes and false high expectations of what is a sexual assault case. The fact of the matter is they're extremely difficult to prove. The reason why Bruce Castor, the previous DA for Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, did not decide to go forward with the case is because it really had a lot of issues in it, as do all sexual assault cases. And there are understandable reasons why they are. They're understandable, but the fact of the matter is the prosecution bears the burden of proving a case beyond a reasonable doubt. That is an extremely high standard, and it is very difficult to meet in sexual assault cases. In this case, you had inconsistencies of the victim. I am not discrediting the victim in any way. I'm only dealing with it as to how these cases play out in a court of law.
But there were dozens of women who came forward to say that he had drugged them and sexually assaulted them. And this was considered, Andrea Constant, right, I believe, the strongest of the cases, right?
No, absolutely not. No, absolutely not. She was the only case that they could bring, and they brought the case because of the statute of limitations within. Yeah. So of the 30, 40, 50, 60 alleged victims, no, I don't necessarily know whether or not she was the strongest, but the reason why they brought it is she was the only case that could be brought, and it was filed. The charges were filed within days of the statute of limitations running.
So if there's a retrial, it will have to be her case again.
Yes, it's just her case.
And you can't bring others in.
Well, no, that's not 100% true. You can, what the prosecutor wanted to do, and this would have been their best shot of getting a conviction, you are allowed to bring in any case, other victims that have a similar pattern as the case for which it's being tried. Those cases are not on trial. You still would only be convicting or acquitting on the case of Andrea Constant. So the prosecutor wanted to bring on 13 other victims to testify, and the judge said, no, you can bring on one other victim because the judge, it's within the judge's discretion, because if it's so highly prejudicial, I mean, people are going to say, well, okay, 13 sounds like a lot, yet he probably did it in that one case. It's within the judge's discretion. This judge did not feel that it was appropriate. In the Jerry Sandusky case, the Penn State University case for sexual abuse, the judge did have 13 or had 15 victims, I believe, testified, at least more than 10 victims that testified.
That Sandusky had done the same thing to them.
Exactly. So those cases were tried together with other victims testifying, and he was obviously he was convicted in those cases. But it's within the discretion of the judge if he wants to do that or not. In this case, the judge chose not to. That was the way that the prosecution could have gotten a conviction. And what I am surprised about in the case is that the jury, we don't know what the split was. We don't know if it's 11-1, which way it's going, 7-5, whatever. But I am surprised that the jurors collectively were able to just look at the Andrea Constant case without saying that, well, it's 60 other victims. Obviously, something's here.
Were they told about the other victims?
No, obviously, I think they know. I mean, they'd have to be living, in a tree somewhere in the rock to not know about it. But the only thing that's being tried,
they can't take that into consideration if they didn't hear it in the courtroom.
What they're taking into consideration is Andrea Constant's case, that she can't remember whether it was January or February or March of 2004 that she filed, and discussed the case a year later, that she had inconsistencies of whether she was with other people at a dinner party when it happened or whether it was her alone. It's ultimately found that it was she alone with him on that incident. Her having multiple conversations with him, some to the tune of over 50 telephone conversations during the course of that year. And even though that was explained away somewhat by the fact that she was still working for Temple University and he was an integral part of the university, the one fact that was still problematic for her was she went to Mr. Cosby or called Mr. Cosby during that time period and asked for tickets to a show that he was performing at in Canada, and she brought her parents. So I'm not saying I don't believe her, but I'm just saying how the jury is looking at all of those issues. And obviously, I think that the best testimony in her case was Bill Cosby's. He didn't testify, but there was a deposition testimony where he's saying that, oh, in the past, I just wanted to get in the game of giving quaaludes to women in order to, perform sexual acts. And in Ms. Constant's case, I gave her Benadryl. I think that was the strongest of what she had, because at least showed that, okay, he does have a little pattern here of doing this in the past, but it all boils down to what you can prove beyond a reasonable doubt in Andrea Constant's case.
And doesn't it also reflect sort of similar to what we were talking about earlier with these cases with white police officers and young black men or women, right? That in sexual assault cases, juries, and when it boils down to he said, she said, it seems to me in too many cases the jury is going to believe the man.
People bring in their own biases in all cases. So in the sexual assault cases, when you have men on a jury, because I don't really see that. I disagree with people to see it as a race thing. I see it as male female in Cosby's case.
Yeah.
And when you have, and I've had these conversations with people recently, when you have men that are listening to the testimony of Andrea Constant, I think that you see them reading into, well, why would she have waited? Why would she have done this? That really doesn't make sense. I wouldn't have done this. Of course, you're not a woman that's been sexually assaulted, so you wouldn't really understand that. And even though there are psychologists that are trying to explain it, that's the bias in those cases. And prosecutors that bring those cases, we know that.
Will there be a retrial?
Oh, well, the prosecutor said that it would be a retrial. I think he spoke, I think he intends to do that, but I think he actually spoke prematurely because, honestly, when I was a prosecutor, and unfortunately I have had mistrials, you actually wanted to talk, if you could, to the jury to see, not necessarily the breakdown, because the judges told them not to discuss their deliberations, but you wanted to ask them what went wrong, what did you like, what didn't you like, what do you think was the problem here?
Right, before you jump. Yeah. I've got to ask you about the maybe biggest story of the day today, which is this question about whether or not the president is under investigation. He says he is. His lawyer trying to pretend that he's not. But my question to you as an attorney is, let's assume that Donald Trump is right and the Washington Post is right. He is under investigation by the special counsel for obstruction of justice. What are the implications of that for the president of the United States if he's found guilty of obstruction of justice?
Well, I think that the special prosecutor can recommend what would happen in the case of if he has, if there is credible evidence to show that he has obstructed justice. I think that what it basically means is that his administration, his presidency is just going to be stuck at zero. There's not much going to be going on because it's not like the special prosecutor, Mueller, is going to be coming to any decisions.
Can he indict him?
That's an interesting question. Most legal people don't 100% agree on it, that believing that the method really is impeachment as opposed to indictment first. So it's not as, the law is really an art and not exactly a science, as I like to explain it.
Plus, this is, we haven't been here before, right? Richard Nixon resigned before he could be found guilty.
Right.
So if he's found guilty, then what I understand is that then the special counsel can say, he tried to obstruct justice. This is a criminal offense. He cannot indict the president of the United States, the president of and so Congress then would have to
start impeachment. Yeah, Congress would need to do impeachment. Would more likely need to do
and
impeachment.
And if they did not, then what you're saying is everything would just come to a halt, to a standstill, and.
Right. I think that if there is credible evidence, which, it's going to be more than just a Comey statement, honestly.
Yeah.
I think if there is credible evidence that the president has obstructed justice in whichever way it rolls down, that I think that Congress will act. But I think that it's going to be more than just a Comey type statement. There has to be really strong evidence. And that's not just because it's the president, but whenever there's a high official, even if it was a mayor, a governor, whatever, you need more than just, as we talked about in the Andrea Constant case, you need more than just a he said, she said, or he said situation.
All right. So at this point, according to the Washington Post, Mueller has scheduled interviews with 3 individuals who reportedly were asked by Donald Trump to put some pressure on Comey to drop the FBI investigation.
Yes.
You know who they are: Director of National Intelligence, Director of the NSA, and the man who just retired as Deputy Director of the NSA. After those conversations, Robert Mueller could decide, there's just not enough here, right? I can't make a case. Or he could decide, there's a lot of evidence here, we've got to go forward with this investigation, right?
Right.
So at this point, I think it's important for all of us to recognize that this is the initial stage.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. This is not just going to be him interviewing 3 other people and then making a decision. I mean, this is actually going to go on for months, if not even another year. So that's what people need to understand. And that's just how investigations are done, whether it's an investigation involving, Donald Trump, or if it's investigation involving any other high-ranking official. They just do not take a matter of days. They can actually take, in this case, likely maybe 18 months. We could be talking about this next year at this time.
Is it a witch hunt?
Oh, I absolutely don't think it's a witch hunt. I think they're onto something. I think really, if you believe what Comey said, and if you believe what Donald Trump's son, Eric, said, that when Donald Trump tells you something, he wants you to do it. He's not hoping that you can just drop it. It is really an order. And if your boss tells you, oh, I hope you can complete this assignment by Friday, they are not hoping. They are telling you this assignment is to be completed by Friday.
Yeah, right. I mean, I find it funny that they would call it a witch hunt when it's being conducted by the Justice Department, which is part of his administration.
Right, right.
I mean, hello.
But Donald Trump apparently...
He named Jeff Sessions, he named Rod Rosenstein.
But he apparently is not pleased or has not been pleased at different moments in time with either one of them. I mean, even Sessions to the point of allegedly saying, oh, I might, if I can't get your trust, and I might need to resign.
Okay. Donald Trump, calling it a witch hunt, and some of his allies, like Newt Gingrich and others, have suddenly become extremely critical of Robert Mueller. Could he fire Robert Mueller, the special counsel? We know he would have to ask Rosenstein to do it, but I mean, in effect, do you think that Trump will or could fire Mueller and get away with it?
Well, we know that he's supposed to ask Rosenstein to do it. I mean, this is a president that is unorthodox and doesn't follow any of the rules, apparently. I think that if he does ask Rosenstein to fire Mueller, I think that we enter into some deep, dark hole that I'm not sure.
Rosenstein would have to resign rather than do it.
And then that's the other theory. How many other people would resign before Donald Trump can get to the person in the Justice Department that could do it? And since he hasn't appointed that many people in the Justice Department, that's the other little problem.
Pretty soon you run out of people to fire, right?
Well, you'll be like down to the 9th person.
Yeah, seriously.
You'll be down to the 9th person in the totem pole.
Well, Jared Kushner may have to come through again, right?
Yeah. Had that resume up from the
right.
bench.
I mean,
all right.
Just keep going.
Hey, Debbie, we covered a lot of territory. Thanks so much for coming
Phil.
in today.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. Yes, indeed. Keep at it, folks. Have a great Monday. You know that Donald Trump will be tweeting all day long. There'll be other things. And this is Technology Week. We'll see what happens on that. Make it a great Monday and come back and see us again tomorrow. We'll all be here and we will be looking for you.
This
Have a good one.
is the Bill Press Show.